Hello and welcome. You're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. We've got a great guest lined up this evening. This is something that I'm fascinated by, and we've talked on and off through the years with guests that claim to have this ability, and it's something that I really wanted to get more into and a better understanding of from somebody that has this. And our guest tonight is Rachel Reimer. She's a medical intuitive, and from a very early age, she's been able to feel and see things. And after recovering from a debilitating health challenge, she was forced to confront these gifts. And since recovering, she's been able to see, feel, hear things from spirit, specifically related to health challenges. She also has some fun stories to share with us about her own encounters with the spirit realm. Welcome to the show, Rachel. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Dave. I'm really excited to be here and talk to you.
Well, it's great to have you here. This is an interesting aspect of the whole field. You know, there's so much to look at, so much to examine when we look at the paranormal and abilities. And this one has been one that really kind of intrigues me, especially, you know, I need to know up front, do you have any official medical training?
I do not have any degrees in any kind of medical training whatsoever.
Okay. Now, growing up, did you have abilities to kind of look at people and get a feel for their emotional or physical well-being?
Not so much with the physical well-being, but more of the emotional well-being. I remember particularly, I think I was around the age of 8 years old. I remember my parents trying to send me to Girl Scout camp. And it was in this huge gymnasium with probably 50 other girls, and everyone's just having a great time. They're playing hopscotch in one corner. They're playing like jacks in another corner. Everyone's enjoying their time there. And I just think this is a living hell being in this room. I don't understand why people like playing with one another. I just want to be in my room by myself. I am so overwhelmed. I remember being in tears, and I looked at my mom. I said, "Can we please just go home?" And she was looking at me so weird and strange. She's like, "Why? Everyone here is having a great time. There's no problems." I'm like, I can't be in this room right now. There's just too much going on. I would get so anxious to the point where I would just have like mental breakdowns of just sitting and crying as a little kid. I didn't want to socialize with anyone unless I absolutely had to.
So you were an empath then? You were just kind of, were you absorbing all of these people's feelings and emotions, or did you just feel like you were over static charged kind of dealing with large groups?
I think a little bit of both. So I would always walk into a room and I would get angry for no reason. It would just kind of light me up. Same thing if I walked into a different room and I would just get really sad and depressed. I just didn't understand. Same thing even going out today, going out and grocery shopping by myself. I'm just standing there unguarded, and sometimes I'll get like random knee pain or I'll get a massive headache while I walk past someone else. Like it's very hard sometimes to stay sheltered and grounded and just forget everyone else's emotional things and energy that they're putting off. It's very frustrating.
I'm curious, this may sound strange or maybe not. We've talked to mediums who've gone to grocery stores and they start picking up on the energies of the animals that have been turned into food. Do you ever differentiate? Can you separate and maybe realize that that's what you're picking up?
I actually haven't thought about that. Typically, that doesn't bother me so much. It's normally just the people that I encounter and that walk right past me. For example, I've had one lady that I sat at I was checking out with groceries, and my right knee was just killing me. Like I was bent over in pain. Like I just wanted to put my debit card in the machine and just get out of there kind of thing. And as I was thinking that to myself, the cashier was like, "Man, my right knee has just been killing me today. Do you have any advice? Like it's just really concerning me, and you just seem like someone that can help me." Like I would have experiences like that all the time, instead of more of the animal products that you were talking about. But I would just have random strangers, especially at the grocery store and at the UPS store and things like that would come up and talk to me when they were experiencing pain. And I was experiencing their pain too. We were going through the same exact thing, apparently.
So you were picking up on their pain when they would start to talk to you, or you were just being in their proximity, you would start to feel the pains?
Just being in their proximity. So let's say that I was looking at a rack of clothes or something like that, and I would start to get kind of a little bit of a thumping headache. And then as someone walked past me, like that headache would keep growing and growing and growing until I was finally able to like pinpoint, oh, this person has a headache. And kind of over the years, that's how I started practicing my gifts of, okay, I'm feeling this in my body right now. Where is this coming from? This doesn't feel like it's mine. It feels like it's someone else's. My knee 2 seconds ago was just fine. My head 3 minutes ago was just fine. What happened all of a sudden that made it start to hurt?
Boy, that's got to be overwhelming, especially if you're out in a grocery store setting or someplace where, you know, your kid's school or something like that, where there's kind of an overwhelming amount of people. Do you really just kind of become a dartboard for everybody's aches and pains and maladies?
Growing up, yeah. To the point, if I'm not feeling well, especially, I have a harder time keeping my guard up and kind of keeping away other people's energetic patterns. But it used to be that way, and it used to be really rough and really difficult. I worked in a chiropractic office for a few years, and it used to be a running joke that I would start to get this pounding headache. And I'd be like, I really think someone's going to come in with a pounding headache. And the new patient that was going to come in an hour later, their main complaint would be migraine headaches to the point where they couldn't see straight. So this would happen frequently over and over and over to the point where it just became funny in the office. Like, oh, Rachel has some knee pain. I guess we can expect that later on. The chiropractor that I worked with ended up like kind of seriously considering my advice at some point, especially on kids and dementia patients that can't really express their aches and pains and their feelings. And I would say, well, when this dementia patient comes in, let me know. And I would stand in the room while the chiropractor was sitting there and adjusting them. And I would say, okay, my right ankle hurts. It didn't before this dementia patient came in. Let's see if you can adjust it and see if the dementia patient comments on it. And 9 times out of 10, the dementia patient would say, oh, I forgot to tell you that hurt. So that's normally like how my gift became really handy and really useful. And from there, I kind of started getting more into working with doctors and other healthcare professionals.
All right. We'll learn about that and I'll find out more about that because it's fascinating. But let's start going back to your childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the awakenings of some of the abilities that you had. What was it like when these things first started to stir?
A lot of it was more bad energy, demonic kind of things. I had nightmares from when I was an itty-bitty baby all the way until age 17 of just like screaming, crying nightmares, waking up several times in the middle of the night. I was inconsolable as a baby. I remember my parents telling me that and just could never figure out what was wrong. And I thought other kids had nightmares or they saw things at night and they just dealt with it. I just was dealing with it poorly for some reason. But I just thought that was normal. I didn't understand it and get it.
Now, as you understand being a medical intuitive at this stage in your life, when you look back at that, what do you think you were really dealing with? Were you dealing with maybe picking up on other people's dreams in your home, other people's stresses, and it was taking the embodiment of evil in your dream states?
I think part of it was definitely stress related. I think a majority of it, though, was just negative spirits. For example, I came back to visit my parents this weekend, and I was upstairs, and I could have sworn that I heard someone moving downstairs for 2 hours, and I thought someone, like my brother, just came home and was sorting through things, and no one was there. The house that I grew up in has had a lot of energetic things happen to it when I've stayed home by myself. When other people are here, none of it happens, which is quite interesting. So I noticed that those things became quite active at night, and especially in my room, not so much in other parts of the house.
Now, do you think you were working as a battery to feed this energy, or do you feel that it was always there and just because of your sensitivity, you were kind of drawn to those areas?
I think it was more, this is the way that I've always viewed it anyway, is the stronger that I tune into my gifts, the more negative energy that kind of wants to shut me down, if that makes sense. So anytime that I've kind of made a spiritual growth or spiritual revelation in my gifts, the way that I view things and the way that I work and the people that I help, I've noticed that a lot more negative energy starts to come in and tries to convince me to go back to their side or to convince me just to shut down my gifts entirely. One specific example of that is I remember just kind of not having such a great night's sleep, like something just felt weird. And I woke up and I remember going out into the kitchen and talking to my mom about it. And my mom was saying, yeah, I didn't sleep quite well either. I had some weird dreams. And she showed me her arm, and she had a huge handprint on it, and it was bruised. And so to me, that's an entity marking. So it was kind of like, hey, if you don't shut down your gifts at this point, we're going to start hurting your loved ones. That's kind of the energy that seems to be in my childhood house anyway.
Wow, that's quite a responsibility to shoulder, to have that kind of thoughts. And if you realize that the dark side did not want you to use your abilities to try to help others, but it's there, it's part of who you are. Did you start looking into ways to protect yourself and protect family members from this, or did you just feel like there was nothing you could do and that you were going to be vulnerable, and if you stepped that line, it was going to come after somebody you loved?
I definitely had moments of that, of is it really worth it if this is going to get to the point where they're going to start picking out people that I love and I care about. That's not quite fair to them. They didn't sign up for that by any means necessary. But just from talking with different spiritual friends and mentors and things like that, I've been working a lot on protection strategies. One thing that significantly helped me that a woman told me was that whenever you feel like things are attacking you, to picture that you're on the beach and you're squishing your toes in the sand. And by doing that, that's a grounding technique. And that's helped me significantly. Anytime I've gone to grocery shopping or like a Cardinals baseball game or some big event, I'll typically do that if I'm sitting down in a chair, just to kind of reorient myself and say, okay, I'm only going to take on my energy right now. Everyone else's energy and everyone else's problems are their own for the next 3 hours or however long I'm there. I just want to be a human being for a little bit. Just let me enjoy my time.
Would you physically see beings as a child, or were you just sensing energies?
A little bit of both. I remember these, I want to call them bubble people because I don't have a better name for them.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone listening has ever seen the episode of SpongeBob SquarePants where they're blowing bubbles and they turn into like bubble buddies. They're just like these faceless like bubble people, and they would just sit there in my room and like they didn't feel good. So I knew it was kind of intimidating, but they didn't have like a clown face or anything scary or anything like that. But I just knew that it wasn't good. And they would just sit there in my room and I'm like, what is this?
But they would not speak to you.
No, they wouldn't speak to me. Like, you got the impression that they were just staring at you, even though they didn't have any faces. Does that make sense? Where you can just kind of tell, like, I feel like someone's looking at me, but I'm not quite sure.
And could you sense what their presence meant? Was it something scary and frightening? I mean, once you get past that shock and awe of there's something here with me, you know, would it be then that it was truly something scary, or was it something maybe just watching and quizzical?
It kind of felt like an intimidating factor, kind of like when you walk into a bar and you see like a 6'5" like bodyguard, security guard. They just have their like standing there with their arms crossed. Mm-hmm. You're not doing anything particularly scary, but you kind of get the impression like, hey, don't mess with me or there'll be trouble.
Right. And when these beings would be around, would you notice that the dark attacks would subside, there would be less feelings of negative energy around you, or would you feel like when they were there, that was the beginning of something else amping up?
That was normally the beginning of something else amping up. It was kind of like a warning, like, hey, like you might have some visitors that you really don't want coming around later tonight, that kind of deal.
Isn't that strange then? Why be there when there's nothing? Why not come to you when you're going to need it? Why not be around you and surround you when these creatures are, you know, coming for the attack? Did you ever question any of your guides or angels or the bubble people on why they weren't there for that moment?
I don't think so. At that point, like specifically with the bubble people, this is when I was really younger, and I still see them occasionally, but not too often. I wasn't really taught or aware of like angels or guides or things of that. That was never really brought into my awareness or just a viewpoint that I had. And I grew up in a Presbyterian church where very rarely we ever talk about angels, let alone any kind of medical intuitive or new age, like spiritual stuff. That just wasn't allowed or wasn't talked about. It was considered weird and kind of shunned upon. So I saw all these bad things, but I didn't know that I could kind of counteract it, if that makes sense. I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the knowledge. And again, as a little kid, I'm just sitting there and I'm kind of like, well, everyone must go through this. If I'm not special or different or anything. I'm just a normal kid. Like, I grew up with twin brothers that are 18 months younger than me. I'm like, oh, Caleb and Seth must also do this, but since they share a room, they just sit and talk about it, and then they go to bed.
Yeah, not having those abilities growing up myself, I guess when you do have them, it's just something you think it's just, well, this is just like everybody's experience. Everybody's going through this. Everybody's having these kind of moments. When you started to awaken to the fact that you were alone in that and that, you know, that wasn't going on for everybody else, how did that make you feel?
I was really confused. It kind of goes into the normal thought process that kind of society holds of, okay, am I crazy? Like, this is kind of what people talk about with schizophrenia, that they just see these random things happen and they think beings are out to get them. And it just kind of went into this like psychiatric thing. And I think my parents kind of contributed to that a little bit, because I remember like when I got to the point of being so anxious and picking up on other people's pain and energy that they ended up putting me on anxiety medicine and like all these other, like trying all these other things just to get me to calm down, and none of it worked, and I hated it because it just changed my personality. And I think that was just kind of a belief that I had engraved in me in a long time, that I was mentally ill or something was wrong with me, that these things were happening. This isn't normal by any means.
That's got to be very isolating and frightening as well. Did you ever try to medicate that with drugs or alcohol?
No, not really. I'll say, like, even today, when I'm open for such a long period of time and I have so many messages coming in, I'll take anxiety medicine once in a great while, but that's it. I refuse to start drinking just because I know that I'm kind of the personality type that I feel like that I would make alcohol an scapegoat, and I really don't want to. I think that may be a major contributor to a lot of people that have drug and alcohol problems, because it just helps. I know the few times that I do take anxiety medicine, it mutes the voices. They're much harder to see. I don't have any pain and my muscles aren't constantly tight. Like, it's just a nice, relaxing feeling to say, oh, this must be what other people go through. This is so nice. This is like a vacation away from my life. I need to do this more often. This is lovely.
Would you pick up on precognitive moments? Did you know prior to friends or relatives that might die or, you know, contract an illness that would take their lives? Did you know that ahead of time?
Growing up, no. Kind of tuning into the medical side of things, happened right after I kind of got ill, and I was kind of on that journey with things. Just growing up in general, it was more of the emotions and seeing the negative side of things.
Now, I'm curious too, in dealing with spirits and kind of the communication, would you hear things? Would you see things? What was kind of your innate ability as a child as well?
Seeing things has been my go-to. It's probably about 80% of what I can do. Probably hearing was about another 10 or 15, and just knowing was just a little bit at that time. Mm-hmm. Hearing voices freaked me out, and it's still something that I'm working on as far as my gifts go. I know I have the ability to do it. Again, it just has to go back to that belief system of, if you hear voices, you must be crazy, or you must have a mental illness, or something has to be wrong with you, because that's not a normal, acceptable thing to have happen.
Well, you know that that's okay at this point in your life. I mean, why is it still such a taboo for you? I mean, is it just because of years of feeling that it doesn't fit? Is that why you kind of still fight the ability?
I would say so. I think it's just the environment that I grew up in, and I would also think that it's just family and friends and things of that nature. It's something that we really don't talk too much about in my house. It's kind of swept under the rug. It's normally like, Rachel, because I'm a senior in college right now, so it's, Rachel, how's your last semester of school going? What kind of job are you going to get? We normally don't talk about the medical intuitive stuff too much. The only person in my family I normally open up to is my mom. That's about it.
Now, you said there wasn't a whole lot of support growing up, right? It wasn't like you could just be open about these abilities?
Correct. I felt very concerned.
Was that because you tried? Did you try to be open about that and it blew up in your face kind of thing? Or did you just intuitively know, I can't talk about this?
A little bit of both. I remember, like I said, when I had nightmares, like every single night, I remember telling my mom about my nightmares. I remember one in particular in high school that I had this nightmare where I saw like a baby and it had the fan cord wrapped around its neck. And I know now, just from retrospective, that was more the demonic entity stuff, that I kept invading my space and kept filling my dreams with that stuff. I remember sitting and telling her that, and I just remember the look on her face on how not okay it was to say something like that. Because, again, that was kind of like, Rachel, we don't talk about those things if you don't want to go into some kind of mental health or some kind of psychiatric medicine or something along the lines of that.
Oh, that must have been really hard to deal with growing up and having that. I mean, it's truly a blessing and a curse in that sense.
Oh, absolutely. That's kind of what I joke about all the time, as far as my gifts go, of what information is it nice to know, and at the same time, what information is very hard to know and not to share with others. In particular, like when I have family and friends or just even acquaintances around and I know that they're ill or I see something in their body, I don't have the authority to go in and say, hey, I see this. I don't have the power to go in and destroy someone's life. I'm not going to help someone unless they're seeking out help.
Well, but if you're given that gift, that's got to be tough to, you have that gift, you're given the sight, you know, even if they're not asking for it, isn't that maybe part of why you're given the gift, is that somebody that might not even have an idea that they're ill or dealing with that, shouldn't they be given that information?
I've struggled with this back and forth, and the best way that I've found to handle it is that if someone's not willing to go on their own healing journey and willing to take a good hard look at what's really going on in their lives, that me saying that information could go in and disrupt a lot of things. For example, I'll give you like a patient thing that I've worked on. So this is a major reason why I like to work with physicians and counselors. I always like to have a nice like healthcare provider or some kind of mental health third party. I was given a case by a woman in Santa Monica, by a doctor in Santa Monica. And this woman was about a year postpartum, and she was just having some normal hormone issues, but the doctor could not figure out what was wrong with her. Nothing was making sense. So I ended up taking her case. I looked at her picture. I went through some of her labs. And my initial reaction after looking at her picture was, this woman has a brain tumor. So I ended up expressing that belief to the doctor that sent me that case. And she was kind of iffy on it. And I totally logically understand that. That's a big jump to go from minor hormone issues to brain tumor. And I said, well, we have nothing to lose at this point because she's been stuck and clearly she's in pain. So let's try and run the lesser of the evil test just to rule it out. So she ended up getting some kind of blood testing ordered that had to do with, I think it was just inflammation in the brain or something along the lines of that. And that ended up coming back positive. So then that kind of flagged the doctor's attention that I worked with. And she ended up going in and ordering an MRI. So once the patient got the MRI results back, it showed a mass on her brain. So then the naturopath referred her over to a neurologist, and then they took some more specific imaging of the brain, and they ended up finding a pituitary tumor. So I don't feel like I have the authority to go up to someone off the street and say, hey, I think you have a brain tumor. That would send someone over the edge. That would disrupt their whole entire life. I think if someone's willing to confront their own physical, emotional, and spiritual issues, then I'm more than willing to help. If they're not, I feel like that always causes more chaos and more issues and more worrying and suffering. I don't want to be a part of that.
All right. What about this medical issue that came up in your life that kind of upset the apple cart and really made you start to face this ability that you had? Were you given triggers about your own medical issues, or is that kind of the double-sided curse of having a medical intuitive ability? You can see for others, but not for yourself.
That's the double-sided curse, my friend. Unfortunately, I can't really do much with my own health, and that's extremely frustrating. I started getting chest pain in 8th grade, and it was just kind of random chest pain, but I knew something was wrong. Parents helped me go to the doctor, got all the heart stuff, all the normal EKGs and everything like that. Everything came back normal. The next summer, it ended up happening again in an episode that I felt like I was having a heart attack. Went through, did all the heart stuff again, went through all the normal medical tests. Everything came back fine. And then the year after that, that's when it started to become a chronic issue to the point where I had problems getting in and out of bed. My high school didn't even want me to graduate because I missed so many days of school. So it's kind of, I guess, in retrospect, it's a good thing that happened because that led me on to my own healing journey. And by doing that, I met the people that ended up helping me develop my spiritual gifts.
And when you were in the thick of this, was that dampening your abilities for other people, or were you still intuitive and sensitive to others around you?
I was still intuitive and sensitive to others around me, and I think that's what made it worse and why I enjoyed the solitude of being in my room and being in my bed because, again, when I was out around large groups of people, that pain that I was already experiencing just became worse and worse and worse, and I even got pain in different areas of my body that didn't hurt before, and I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, I don't know what else to do at this point. This is miserable.
How did your physicians deal with that? Did they believe you and take you on your word that you were absorbing other people's maladies, or did they just think you were a wackadoo?
No, they pretty much thought I was a wackadoo. I remember when I would go in and say, hey, I'm really experiencing this pain and this pain and this pain, they would just prescribe me antidepressants. That was about the only thing that I could ever get out of them. Was, we don't really know what's wrong with you. You might have this weird, rare chest condition, but that's about it. We can give you some depression medicine in the meantime. Otherwise, I don't know what to do. That was the general consensus of what I got. And I've probably seen over 25 doctors for that condition. And I never got any help out of any of those providers or doctors.
Did that cause depression and issues when you knew there was something going on and there was just no way to help you and nobody really understood or could work with you on that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the same for anyone that goes through chronic illness of why isn't someone listening to me and understanding that I have this pain. I know you might not be able to see it. I don't walk with a limp or anything significant like that, but no one thinks that I'm sick. Everyone thinks that I'm making this up, and I'm not. Clearly you can tell that I'm in pain when I'm getting out of bed and trying to sit up for more than 5 minutes at a time. That's extremely frustrating because you feel like, again, that goes back to the I'm not crazy. I need someone to listen to me, that something's wrong here. Something's clearly going on. A 17-year-old girl should not be trying really hard just to sit up for more than 5 minutes in her school desk. That's not normal.
All right, and that's brutal as well. And you're taking on these maladies of other people. And were you able to separate and know this isn't mine? I'm picking this up, but it's not mine. I feel this pain in my head, but I know it's not mine. Or did that take a long time for you to be able to start to draw that divining line?
That took a long time. That took until 2014 for me to finally understand the difference between my issue and your issue kind of thing. Not our issue. Our issue doesn't exist. I was taking on too many other people's pain and working with some spiritual friends that significantly helped on, okay, is this my pain or is this person's pain? And just going through those steps kind of, it helped me physically significantly as well as emotionally and spiritually.
Do people reach out to you? You said unknowingly they'll be out with you. You'll be out at the store. You'll be somewhere, and they'll say, I know it sounds weird, but do you send something, or how do they ask that question without knowing that you're an intuitive or that you're a sensitive?
Sure, I'll give you a story about me standing in line trying to return my textbooks at the UPS store. So I was standing there minding my own business, just trying to get the guy in front of me to hurry up. I was kind of in a hurry at that point. This random guy just walked through the door, stood in line right behind me, and struck up a conversation. And he said, "I'm about to go have surgery tomorrow on my back, and I'm really nervous about it. I mean, I just don't know what to think. How do you think I'll do? What do you think about that?" And it was things like that where I'm standing there and I'm like, dude, I don't even know you. I don't know your name.
Right.
I don't know why you're asking me this. So I would just sit there and be like, give my honest opinion. I'm like, well, if you feel like it's going to go okay and it feels good, then go for it. I mean, if you're feeling apprehensive and nervous about it, I mean, take a step back and analyze why you think that. That was the best I could do. I'm just sitting there like, I don't know what to do. Clearly I'm not a doctor. I can't give you medical advice. I'm just trying to be a comforting stranger at this point, I suppose.
That's got to be kind of disarming as well, to have random strangers kind of almost sense you in this magnetic way where they come to you for that. Do you ever, when they're talking to you and you have the ability to see and hear spirits, are there family members, ghosts, whatever you want to call them, with them, kind of pointing to the places where there are problems? Or how does that work?
Sometimes. It depends on the person. Normally with ghosts, I normally see that around people that I'm close around. So, for instance, my boyfriend was very, very close to his grandfather. And I remember before even going on our first date, just talking to him, his grandpa would sit in the room and say, hey, make sure to compliment Lance on this and this and this. He'll really like that, and he'll really admire that in you in a first date. And then he would also say, just remember, Lance deals with headaches once in a while when he's stressed out. Just keep that in mind. He'll kind of give me insights on that. And I'm like, thank you. I appreciate the advice. I don't know what else to say. But that's come up quite frequently, especially with even my mom too. My personal grandpa will come around in the house and say, Joanne, make sure you need to take your migraine medicine today, or some just silly things along the lines of that. It doesn't happen too much with strangers.
What does Rachel think about people that are developing these kind of abilities and want to become more open to this? Is this something that they should pursue? Is this something that they should learn to subdue because it's such a razor's edge that you have to walk? We'll find out more about that. You could check out her website, myrayofhope.com. That's MYRAEOFHOPE. We've got a link up for that on our show page. So all you have to do is look right there on today's episode, and you'll see a link to her website, and check that out. We will take a quick break. We'll be back. We've got more and the best of Paranormal Talk Radio heading your way. I'm Dave Schrader, and this is Beyond the Darkness.
Beyond the Darkness.
Hello, welcome back to the best in Paranormal Talk Radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. Remember to go sign up for True Crime Tuesday and never miss another minute of the best in True Crime Talk Radio. And the best part is you can listen any day of the week, but we release a brand new episode every Tuesday through Patreon. It's $5 a month to sign up. That's it. Just $5 measly dollars gets you 4 brand new episodes that are 90 to 120 minutes long, and you hear some of the most intriguing and suspenseful true crime tales. Plus, we dally in the world of dumb crimes and stupid criminals to lighten it up and have a little fun. We also visit with I Knew a Murderer, your real-life stories where you've met murderers. And if you've met a murderer, we want to hear from you. You can email me, dave@darknessradio.com. Tell me your story. We also want to know your paranormal stories for our Monday show. So you can write in and tell us your encounters with the strange and the supernatural. You can also write it as a nice narrative, and I may use it on an upcoming Theater of the Mind. So keep that in mind as well. You can always contact me, dave@darknessradio.com. That's dave@darknessradio.com. And I want to remind everybody we're doing our big Dracula stakeout trip for 2018. We're heading back to Romania in the path of Dracula, Vlad the Impaler. We will be visiting 3 or 4 castles well known to his history. We'll get to investigate. You heard me right. We get to do an investigation of 2 of those castles. We'll also investigate the Baisu Forest, one of the most haunted forests in the world, wrought with ghosts and alien activity. That's our kickoff for the event. If you'd like more information, check out darknessevents.com and click on the Dracula Stakeout banner and Romania banner. You'll be able to find all the information there and sign up now. Payment plans are available if you hurry up and sign up and get involved. We are keeping it down to about 40 people. We're already 15, 16 people in, so we're almost half sold out. So make sure if you're interested in joining us this year on our Dracula Stakeout event, you go sign up now at darknessevents.com. If for any reason you're having trouble finding that, just email me, dave@darknessradio.com, and I'll send you a direct link. All right, let's get back to it. Our guest tonight, Rachel Reimer. I said that right, Rachel?
Yes, did.
Okay, gosh, you got one of those names where you could go either way on it, and the way you look at it, you want to read it a different way. Rachel Reimer is our guest. She's a medical intuitive. She has connections to the spirit world inside, and I'm curious about that too. Let me ask you real quickly, and I want to get into the question I posed before the break of should people try to develop this ability, but where do you get most of your information? Obviously, you don't have a medical background and training. Are they spirits that are giving you this? Something whispering to you? Do you look at a person and a part of them starts to light up? I've actually talked to some medical intuitives that claim that. They'll look at somebody, kind of like doing an x-ray scan with their eyes, and they'll see hot points on people's body, and that's what draws them to, this is where I think you might have an issue.
Sure. So this is how I view the body and how I best like to explain it is if you're looking through a normal anatomy and physiology textbook, you see one page full of bones. You see one page full of muscles. You see one page full of nerves and one page full of organs and so on and so forth. You see these different viewpoints or different pages. That's how I like to go in and look at the body. So if someone's saying I'm having back issues, I'll go to my bone page. If someone's saying that I tore my calf, I'll go to the muscle page. I typically like to hang out in the organ page when I do readings, especially for doctors, just because that's typically where I found the most problems that like to set up housekeeping. And as far as going on and explaining things with that, I have a lot of different signs and symbols. So typically I'll have different organs light up, kind of like an arcade game or a pinball game. And from there, I'll go in and kind of look at it like a gauge that you would have. I'm trying to think of what kind of thing a gauge would be on, maybe a bicycle or a tire pump or something like that. And the gauge will be from 0 to 100%. And I'll go in and I'll look at it and I'll say, okay, this feels like this is functioning at 88%. The lungs are functioning at 22%. The liver's functioning at 29%. And just from doing this over and over and over and just practicing these gifts and doing these charts, I've started to notice some specific patterns. For example, if I get a patient and I see that the liver, spleen, and the adrenals are all lit up at once, typically that patient has been diagnosed with lupus or they will be diagnosed with lupus in the future. So just having these patterns and signs and symbols has been very helpful as far as my work goes and just getting patients even to a diagnosis if no one knows what's wrong.
Did you say, do spirits ever help you on this? Do they ever aid and whisper in your ear or stand next to the person pointing to the place that they need to get checked?
At times, it just depends, especially if it's in person. Spirits are a lot more likely to help. Normally, if I'm just getting a case from a doctor or some other kind of healthcare provider, it's normally just me looking at that picture and any other information they give me. Normally, their loved ones don't come in and help out just because I'm not familiar with them. As of right now with my gifts, where they're currently at, I normally only see spirits with my own personal family and friends.
Do you believe is this something you would recommend people open up to? You know, we have different psychics and mediums on the show that have said, oh yeah, definitely connecting with the mediumistic side of you, speaking to spirit, having that part of your world open is great. But in this case, I'm wondering if this is more of a real calling, something that it should just kind of be blessed upon you instead of you seeking it out.
I think that everyone, from my perspective anyway, I think that everyone has their own gifts and abilities, and as long as they seek out the help of someone that has kind of been open to this for a while and knows how to protect themselves, I think that's the best way to go about doing it. I mean, I didn't know or understand that I had these medical abilities until I was sick. I just thought that I had empathic gifts when I was little, and I could see things. I didn't know that I would be able to help find different tumors and blockages and stuff in bodies. I would have never dreamed of that until I kept practicing and practicing and practicing. I think it's absolutely important if someone thinks that they can hear something to go in and explore that, as long as they have someone to kind of help them get into that realm and protect them just in case. A nice, good safety zone. That was one thing that I wish I had growing up, was kind of a mentor of, okay, if you're seeing these things, this is how we deal with it so that you don't see it anymore.
Are there scary aspects to this job, aside from taking on other people's aches and pains? I mean, do you ever see that the malady, the reason that they're feeling this is because they have a demonic attachment? They have something dark and malevolent messing with them and causing these issues when it's not really a true medical condition as opposed to a paranormal condition.
Absolutely. And that's the hardest thing. That's always the hardest thing for me when I have to go back to the doctor and say, hey, I think this is a spiritual issue, because I understand from their perspective. They're like, well, what do you want me to do with that? So far, what has worked is one of the doctors that I work with in Santa Monica, he came up with some sage tea for anyone that I saw that had an entity in them, and their health has actually improved since taking that
sage tea. Really? I didn't even know that you could do that.
Yeah, you can put some sage leaves and a tea steeper in some hot water and just let it steep, and then you still get the sage herb. So instead of lighting the sage to help clear the air, it's, in a sense, clearing the body.
Isn't that interesting? I would have never even thought of that. Sage tea. What is it about sage? Do you have any clue why sage is so powerful against the spirit realm?
I have no idea. That's one of those things of, that's just kind of what it is. Why is the sky blue? I'm sure there's a great scientific explanation, but all I know is that it's blue. I don't know the logical reason behind that.
That's funny. Talk to me about the scary aspect of this. When you are looking in and you notice that it's something demonic, does the demonic realm realize you know they're there? And how do they respond?
Absolutely. Those are kind of the cases that I dread getting. Normally I have to take a second to ground myself and let some sage or do whatever I feel like I need to do, depending on how powerful that demonic energy is. And I normally just have to sit there and confront it and have a conversation with it and say, you are not allowed to be here anymore. This person is working on getting rid of you. You will be gone. And that's just kind of the aspect of the job. That's just what comes with it. Sometimes people are sick from structural issues. Sometimes people are sick from unresolved emotional trauma. Sometimes people just have spiritual stuff that gets in there. Like kind of what I was talking about earlier with my mom. Sometimes just like to go in and mess with people just because they have the power to.
Now, if you push one out, is there a fear that it's going to go and attach to somebody else in the family? Have you ever seen that where you exercise it, for lack of a better term, and somebody else in the family comes down with the same malady?
That's never personally happened to me or in a professional setting. Normally the way that I envision it once I say something along the lines of that is I always picture the room being completely gold, and any time that entity comes out, that it just immediately dissipates. All of that positive energy, it just eliminates it right away. And that even happens on a daily basis too, when I'm out in public and I'll see the entity.
And please don't take this. Yeah, please don't take this wrong. And I know it's always whenever you start off a sentence like that, you automatically feel you're going to take it wrong. But here's my question for that then. That's where I think we lose a lot of people. Well, I envision golden light, and when the demon pokes his head out, he immediately evaporates. Well, just because you imagine golden light doesn't mean there's actually golden light around that person. How does that impact or affect it? I understand it may affect your psyche as a placebo kind of effect, and that makes you feel better, but how do we know that really works? For somebody on the outside looking in, trying to understand this, how do you address something like that?
Sure. I suppose you could go back to an energetic standpoint that every single thing, dead or alive, has energy to it. So let's say an entity has a certain, an entity has a certain frequency to it, and that just changing our own emotions can change the frequency of the body. So if I'm emitting a frequency much higher than the demonic energy, the demonic energy can't survive. It won't survive in that kind of energetic state, if that makes sense. Does that make sense the way that I explained that in terms of energy?
It does, but then hear me on the other side, right? So you're projecting a golden light around Dave to protect me. Well, the demon, this isn't his first jog around the block. Obviously they can do this because they're powerful. Can't he just come out and emit a black light that kind of wipes away some of your golden light? You know what I'm saying? Isn't there, if there's a yin and a yang and a good and a bad and a light and a dark, don't they have equal power since they're able to kind of come and go as they please and affect people the way they're doing it?
Sure. I'll give you an analogy back. Let's take a teenage boy that's hungry. Let's say that one fridge has a lock around it. Let's say that that's the golden energy that I put around you, and another fridge doesn't. Once I lock up that other fridge, that teenage boy is going to probably stop trying to go into that fridge and just go for the easy way out and go to the fridge that's already open next to it. That's the way that I envision it anyway. As entities are just trying to poke their heads and disrupt as many lives possible. If that's too hard to get into, unless they have like a personal vendetta or something against that, which I haven't seen, they just move on to the next body that's functioning fairly lowly that they can go in and pick on.
All right. Now that I get, I can wrap my head around. But if you're starving these things and they're angry, do they ever attack you?
To an extent. Again, it's kind of the same thing of, again, confronting it. Like, you're not going to bother me. I'm not going to tolerate it. You can sit here and poke at me all day if you want, but you're not going to get your fun. If you want your fun, go somewhere else, because I'm not going to put up with it. I'm not going to tolerate it. I'm not going to let it get to me. That's what they look for. They feed off of that. I'm bothering you. I'm disrupting your life. I'm making your life a living hell kind of thing. If I'm not going to feed into that, they're not going to sit here and bother me.
When you're doing the diagnosis, do you ever pick up on the fact that what's making me sick is me? That it's something I've carried with me or I brought with me from a past life?
I haven't encountered that yet, but I wouldn't deny that as a possibility. Normally, I just see things on the current physical, emotional, and spiritual level. But I suppose, let's say, I know of a case of a baby that came into this world, and she had a lot of brain issues. So obviously, she didn't do any kind of emotional or physical damage to herself, just being a baby in the womb. So it's possible that that was a energetic kind of karmic thing that came from another life. Maybe she got injured in a past life. Maybe she just decided to come in and experience what it was like to have brain issues. I think that those things could be maybe tied into past lives.
How about spirits, just human spirits that are earthbound? Do they ever interfere with humans and make us sick?
As far as like the everyday grandpa and grandma and aunt and uncle kind of thing that have passed away?
Not necessarily even relatives, just, maybe you move into a house and there's a ghost that lives there. Can they make you really sick? Like an attachment. Is that a real thing in your world? And I don't mean the demonic sort, but I just mean as in, maybe grandpa or grandma or whoever lived in that house died of tuberculosis or lung cancer, and all of a sudden you start feeling sick and run down all the time, and you feel like your lungs hurt, whatever it is, and medical science can't find an answer. Is it because the spirits are leeching from you your health and kind of juxtaposing onto you their maladies?
I'd say it's possible. I'd say it's definitely more of a realistic possibility for people that are open like me and that are more empathic to the normal everyday person that just has the occasional cold or flu. I don't particularly see that being an issue. Just the way that I view things anyway is people that have passed on are normally kind of stuck in their own mental state, in their own mental garbage, and they normally aren't really paying attention to what's going on. Let's say that someone passed away and in their house and someone else moved in and they didn't want them in their house. I don't think they would inflict any physical pain on them either necessarily. They might just mess with them, such as like electrical or turning doorknobs or things like that. But I personally haven't seen any kind of earthbound spirit come in and mess with someone as far as physical health goes.
All right. Talk to me about one of the scariest experiences you've ever had, though, with all of these abilities. What's the weirdest thing that's ever happened or the most frightening?
I think one would be recently. So I was visiting my grandparents' cemetery stones this summer, and I remember sitting by them, and my grandpa, who's passed away, came up and talked to me, and he said, Rachel, I think your dad's going to have some kind of accident or some kind of health challenge or something really doesn't feel right. I really think that he's going to have something horrible happen to him before Christmas. So I'm sitting there hearing that, and I get upset. I'm like, okay, well, if that's what it is, that's what it is. That's all the information I have. That's all the information anyone's willing to give me at this point. So I'm just going to keep going with that and keep going with that. Right before Christmas, I want to say maybe December 20th, something around there, I ended up having a horrific nightmare of my dad standing on the roof of his house putting up Christmas lights, and he fell off the roof from a heart attack and like instantly died. And you know how you have those falling dreams or something, and when you're falling, you never actually see the person die, but you get the impression. This time I saw him like die. I saw his face hit the ground and instantly die. I didn't wake up when he hit the ground. I stood there and like looked at him. That freaked me out. So I remember calling my mom in a panic in the middle of the night, and I was like, is that okay? Did he have a heart attack or something? She said, no, your dad's fine. He doesn't think he needs to go to the doctor. Nothing's wrong with him right now. And I found out that when I called, my dad hadn't put the Christmas lights up. So this is one of those things where...
no, the precognition,
he
right?
did it, yeah. So he eventually put the Christmas lights up, but I'm sitting there, even in retrospect today, did I stop that from happening? Was that supposed to happen? And I wasn't supposed to call my dad and my mom and let them know? Those are the scary things that I have happen of, okay, is this just a bad dream? Is someone messing with me, or is this realistic? Those are the things that I...
It's funny that you worry that maybe you weren't supposed to say anything. I always think, well, if they're giving you that vision and that gift, why wouldn't you say something?
That's the hard part. Am I asking for information just to know, or am I asking for information to know?
But you didn't ask for that information. You didn't ask for that information. It was just thrust on you, right?
Correct. I've always had a kind of a deal with spirit of just let me know what's going to go on, and I'd rather know something than not know and it be a surprise. That's the way that I always interpret it, and it's hard either way, because let's say if one of your family members is ill, do you want to know that they're going to have a heart attack, or just be surprised like the normal population, say, oh my gosh, like my mom had a heart attack. I had no idea that was about to happen. That brings up a really good question of, do you want to know or do you not want to know? And I've made the hard decision that I would rather know, no matter how painful it is.
All right, but being given that information, then, if you were able to nudge your father off that ledge and you change the parameter, that's a good thing. Or are you worried that, kind of in the cosmic karmic scheme of things, by saving him and moving him from that point, does that now move it on, do the crosshairs open on somebody else?
I'd say it's more of a karmic thing that I'm worried about, of, am I messing with what's supposed to happen? "Quote unquote," supposed to happen.
I don't think they would give you that information. Yeah. I don't think that the universe would give you information that would screw up how life is supposed to be.
Yeah.
I just don't see that. That seems like it'd be a pretty cruel joke to play, to give somebody that ability and then be like, but if you use it, you're going to kill someone else or you're going to cause problems elsewhere. That just seems like the universe. I have a hard time believing the universe would be that cruel.
Yeah,
but I could be wrong.
That's why in this case, anyway, I was like, I don't really care no matter what. He's kind of my dad. Like, I'm just going to have a human moment and a compassion moment for a second and just be like, screw it, I got to say something anyway. Yeah,
that's fascinating to me. Before we launch in, and I want to know, you had kind of an interesting and funny incident with somebody regarding a health issue. We're back and we're talking with our guest this evening, a medical intuitive, kind of a spiritual person who has this ability to see and understand people and the medical maladies and things that are working in their body. I want to know this kind of funny story you've got, and then I do want to get into how doctors find you. How do you broach that subject with a doctor? Hey, by the way, I might be able to give you a hand on that. Here you've got a guy who spent 8, 12, 15 years in school to do what he does so that they could be the best. And here comes this gal with no official medical training looking over files and giving them insights that they couldn't see. That's got to be tough on the old medical ego. But let's hear about this kind of funny health story that you had for me first.
Sure. So just being a stereotypical college student, I like to go out and enjoy myself on a Friday night. So I ended up going out with a group of friends to a local bar, and I was introduced to someone that I've never met before that was part of this friend circle. And right when I met him and I shook his hand, I was having a really hard time, like, not staring at him below the waist, because I realized that his genitalia was glowing green, and it was extremely distracting.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can't understand why somebody's genitalia glowing green would be distracting to you. So your eyes keep looking down there, right?
Exactly. That was the hardest part. I ended up sitting at a table with this person I was introduced to with my whole friend group for 2 hours, and every time he talked, I was like, Rachel, don't stare at his crotch. Rachel, don't stare at his crotch. And it was kind of like one of those don't look kind of things. And I remember going home with one of my friends and asking about it, and I was like, do you know what's going on with this guy's crotch? Like, does he have issues or something? Like, what's the deal here?
Wait a minute. How do you broach that subject? How do you bring up, hey, by the way, do you know anything about this guy's crotch? What does that say about your friend if they do know about it?
I don't know. It was one of those things where I was like, I just have to know. Like, I don't see someone's crotch that glows green every single day. Like, this is so bizarre. So the person that I asked ended up knowing, and I was like, thank the Lord, okay. And I guess this guy ended up having, like, HPV. So I was like, okay, in my head, now I know what active HPV looks like. But it was one of those things that I was just kind of like, I don't want to ask the guy, like someone I just met, like, why'd your crotch green? Kind of thing. But
it ain't easy being green.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So what you're saying is if you and I meet in person and your eyes are automatically drawn to my my crotch, I should be concerned that it's glowing some kind of weird color.
It could quite possibly be glowing some kind of weird color. I'll do my best not to look at your crotch, though.
Well, no, for God's sakes, let me know if I got something happening there. That's got to be an awkward conversation. Hey, Dave, nice to meet you. Whoa, why is your crotch glowing purple? That's a weird effect.
Yeah, those things happen kind of once in a while where it's like, I socially don't know how to handle myself right now. So that's normally what I think about the rest of the night. Do I bring this up to this person? Do I think they could handle it? Do I just talk about it with a friend later? What exactly do I want to do with this information? Again, it's like just for fun, for my knowledge sake. Am I supposed to tell the guy that his crotch is glowing green? I don't know what to quite do in a situation like that. I don't think that's ever been taught to me. As far
they don't cover that in school. No, they don't say, hey, by the way, it might teach you how to flirt or talk to somebody, but not how to tell them their penis is glowing green. That's that's a weird situation. And I love the fact that you kind of felt the need to, hey, you know that guy you introduced me to? Do you know anything about his crotch?
Yeah.
I would think that made a very awkward conversation as well. Once you ask that,
it was an interesting drive home.
Once you ask a question like that, how does your friends respond? Did they just start laughing because they did know? And God, what does that say about the other guy that his friend knows he's got HPV?
Right. The friends that I hang out with on a normal basis are aware of like what I do and what I can pick up on and everything like that. So they actually found it hilarious that I ended up picking up on that right away, and that was my main focal point throughout the whole entire night.
Do you sense things over the phone as well, or does somebody have to be standing right in front of you for this ability to kick in?
Typically, the best way for me to utilize my gifts is to have a recent picture of someone, just because then I can sit with the picture for a little while. Mm-hmm. Just sitting and talking to strangers normally makes me a little biased because I'm like, oh, I really like this person. Like, I don't want to tell them bad news, or I don't want to share this particular thing. I remember when I first started getting in like good friendships with people, having to be like, hey, like, you have this kind of serious emotional issue, and I think it, like, started around this time period, what was going on in that part of your life. Like, oh, my parents got divorced. Like, it turns into, like, a really serious conversation, and that's not, like, a conversation you want to have on an everyday basis, especially if you're a college student and you just want to go out and have a good Friday or Saturday night. It can get quite serious and heavy pretty quickly. Do people get pissed sometimes when you do tell them what's going on? Oh, absolutely. 100%. My poor boyfriend, I will be sitting there on the couch and I will go into like the next room and I'll be like, hey, your grandpa's sitting on the couch right now and he's telling me you need to sit and have a conversation with him, or you need to be out doing the dishes, or you need to apologize to this friend that you had an argument with like 2 days ago, or like it's very frustrating because sometimes I'll call things out and people just don't want to confront their problems. I totally get that. Right. And sometimes things in life just really suck. Like, you don't want someone constantly bringing it up, like, hey, you need to do this. Like, it's just like another mom figure. It's like, yes, Mom, I understand, but not right now. Right. Wow, that is remarkable. Now, how do you get, and how do doctors find out that, hey, you know, Rachel Reimer, she's got this ability. I should really seek out her help. I mean, that's got to. How do you start building that clientele? That was the absolute hardest part for me. So I just started working with the chiropractor that I was just employed with, starting out as a young adult. And then it kind of turned into a physician network of, did you know that Rachel can, like my employee Rachel does this? Could you possibly benefit from this? Like, I know that you've been talking about this one stubborn patient with me. Let's see if she can have a go at it. The other route with it was just doing like directories, especially with naturopaths, just because they're typically a little more open than medical doctors, of, hey, this is me. This is what I can do. If you have any stubborn patients that are willing to consent to me looking over their cases, like, let me know. Give me a shot. Let's figure it out. I totally understand from an empathetic view that it's no fun to be sick and no one being able to figure out what's wrong with you. Let's just get it going and get some more resources. At some point, no matter how much training, if you're sitting there stuck and stumped, you just need help and you need a different viewpoint. It may be from another medical doctor. It may be even from a family member if they say something, or a TV show. I just happen to be another resource that can point providers in the right direction.
So if you meet Tim, and Tim's been having chronic headaches, can you look at Tim and say, this isn't a real medical malady. It's stemming from when you were 8 years old and your daddy slammed the door and said, he wished you were never born. Can you dig in that way as well, so you're seeing the psychological scars?
Correct. Yep. So going back to that example, normally when I go in and do the percentages, if the percentages are fairly low, let's say in the 30s to 0%, normally I know that there's some kind of large emotional component. So I'll go in and ask, okay, did this emotional issue happen 2 years ago? Yes or no? 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And once I get to that age range, I'll normally go through categories. Okay, does it have to do with love? Does it have to do with money? Does it have to do with family? Does it have to do with relationships? And then keep going and diving in deeper and deeper and deeper until I feel like I found that emotional root. And typically I know when I've found it and it resonates with a client of a physician, I'll see a green check mark, which means, okay, that's it. I can stop digging. That's where we need to start.
Do you help people, like if we have listeners right now that have been through the ringer with doctors and they're just not getting any help, they feel like they're at their rope's end. Do you help in those cases as well? And is that something you charge for?
Sure. So with everyday people, I always refer them out to a different doctor just because that doctor is going to be a stable figure in their life. I might only speak to them 1 or 2 times in their life. They're going to continue seeing their doctor, and that doctor can order more resources such as blood work, MRIs, CT scans, any other kind of thing that I can't provide, and they're going to be able to back up my insight on things. And that's just kind of like a secondary, like, oh, okay, someone's listening to me, someone acknowledges that I have a problem. Again, just kind of going back to that brain tumor case, it's very difficult for me to work one-on-one with people just because I don't want to be biased. I want to give them the absolute truth, and I want that physician to figure out the best way to give that patient the absolute truth since they have a better relationship with them.
So, maybe this is something you could put to rest because my wife has been hassling me about it. Tim's been making fun of me about it. But can you finally, just for once and for all, just let the world know I'm deeply invested and infested with the man flu, and it is a near killer. Just tell them that, my whining and crying and needing to be babied is a real medical malady and not just a man being overly whiny and gripey. You could tell them. You're a medical intuitive. Tell them.
Yes, I am. So from my perspective, just going in and talking to you, because I looked right before we had a conversation before going on the air, I have a specific pattern for bacterial infections, which are normally like little white soldiers, and that's what I'm seeing in your lungs. So to me, you just have a case of bacterial bronchitis.
I have bacterial bronchitis. All right, so it's not a demon.
No, not a demon, not a major emotional issue, just an unfortunate battle with the weather conditions and some not so fun environmental things getting passed around.
Hey, honey, good news. It's just bronchial viral, and my penis is not glowing green, so we're okay. I just let her know that. Of course, you didn't tell me that, so I didn't ask that question, but I'm gonna self-intuit that one myself.
That's one prayer you can say before bed tonight, is I'm glad that my dick doesn't glow green. It's always a good thing to be thankful for.
I want that on a T-shirt. Everybody out there, let's get I'm glad my dick does not glow green T-shirts. That's going to be a big seller. Wow. Fun times. It's fascinating to talk to you, and I thank you so much for being open with us and kind of letting us in on your unique abilities and that around you. I'd love to chat with you again in the future as this progresses and you have more stories to share. And, if you have clients that are willing to let you go deep with telling us some of these stories, please reach out and let me know about that.
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to. I'm sure I can find you a lot more stories here pretty soon.
Rachel Reimer, our guest, and again, we'll have a link up to her website. You can find it right on our posting for today. Thank you all. Be safe, be kind, love one another, and for God's sakes, get that glowing green crotch checked for all of our sakes. We'll see you again tomorrow right here on the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness.